this is, looks like a place. I think there's a lot of produce here, maybe. Or could be getting this confused with somewhere else. Oh, I thought those were walls. Okay. Well, as soon as I can get somewhere safe, I'll go over the admin settings. That's not going to cover the settings for your server that are available through your server provider. Let's see. Where is stone knife? There it is. Oh, they changed the sound for making a stone knife. Taking hands. Alright, at least I have this now. So I'm going to try to get to the top of that lighthouse. I figure that'll be safe from puppets. Oh, looks like a truck missing some parts. I don't know if I can jump up there. Nope. Which means I'll have to go inside. Oh, and sometimes these spiral staircases, if you've got a large pack on, you can, I don't know, it does something with the collision and you can wind up like falling. So take these spiral staircases slowly if you're loaded down with a big pack. Alright, so should be safe up here. Alright, so now let's see, escape server settings. Okay, allow first person, I usually do. Allow third person, I usually do. Allow crosshair. You know, if you're into realism, you can turn that off, but I usually leave that on just in case you're in third person. Allow mines and traps. If you have other players on your server and PvE or PvP is allowed, allowing mines and traps could result in you getting griefed by another player. Like, for example, if you set up a safe zone, another player may set a line of mines right outside your safe zone, and then when you walk out of it, kablooey, you get blown up. It's a cheap way to get kills. So I usually deactivate allow mines and traps. If you want to use them against other players, you'll have to have them activated, though. I don't find many opportunities to use them against puppets, unless it's like a contrived, engineered scenario. Let's see, allow skill gain in safe zones. Some players like hang out in a safe zone to boost their skills doing who knows what. It's up to you. limit global chat. That's if you don't want players knowing what's going on with other players who aren't on their team elsewhere on the map. So that could be good for maintaining the fog of war, kind of. But at the same time, it's kind of good to have so that players can call out for help from other players. But a lot of times if you're an admin, you'll get players calling out for help because their vehicle fell through the map, or their vehicle wound up in the water and they want you to reset it, and it becomes a real headache. Let's see, disable timed gifts and enable disable timed gifts. I don't know what that is. That must be something new. Disable timed gifts. Disable base building. I would not turn that on. I would leave that off because obviously you want to be able to engage in base building. Partial wipe. You want to leave that off. If you turn that on, I believe when you restart the server, it will wipe the map. So including anything that's been built. It may leave your character. It's possible it's the reverse, where it'll wipe characters and leave stuff on the map. You'll have to look that up. It's been several months since I've played the game steadily. Let's see, gold wipe. So you can acquire gold, and that allows you, and you can take that gold into the next server wipe, if I remember correctly. So if you, I guess, turn on gold wipe, then that wipes any acquired gold from the player. Now, gold is not the same as credits or the euros in the game. Gold is something you can use sometimes for respawning. I think there might be one other use for gold. Again, it's been a while, I'm sorry. Fame gain multiplier. Players who think that they're not acquiring fame fast enough may want this boosted, because I think they've made it harder since like last December to get fame, to acquire fame. And fame points, you know, can be lost, I think, for respawn, or is it respawn's just based on money expenditure now? Anyway, I've forgotten what use fame has now, but there was a period of time where fame didn't really seem to have much of a use at all. It was like about the only thing it was good for was seeing where you stood on the leaderboard. So ratio of fame point penalty on death. These are the ratios of, come on, tooltip. Oh my gosh, these hitboxes, come on. What? There. Ratio of fame points that the victim loses when they die in any way, except when they're killed by another prisoner. So I guess in this case you would lose 1/4 of your fame points upon death. And then the numbers are different for... and then here, if you kill someone, then that's the ratio of the victim's fame points. So that's for a player. So if a player has 200 fame points, you would get 50 fame points with this setting when you killed them. Log suicides, that's an admin thing if you want to see if anybody's exploiting suiciding in order to transport themselves around the map. If they're doing a random sector respawn, then they may continue suiciding until they wind up where they want to be on the map, which might be next to a battle that they were just in. Enable player spawn on ground instead of parachute spawn. So yeah, in the old days the player would just spawn on the ground. So you might want to turn that on if you don't like the parachuting sequence. Because one thing the parachuting sequence does is it gives the player a chance to look around and see where other players' bases are in the immediate vicinity. Log chest ownership. Should chest ownership changes be logged in the chest ownership log or not? I'm not sure what the purpose of that is. Maybe there's a cheat that's stealing players' chests. I don't know. So let's see. So that was general, and there's no tab over for that. World does have subcategories. Okay, so there are abandoned bunkers, and in the abandoned bunkers, the noise that you make can awaken enemies. So this sets the amount of noise needed in order to awaken those enemies, and this is like a multiplier. So, and you don't know what the initial amount is, but it's you just have to go by what your experience in the game is like, and then modify it from there. They started going with these modifiers for settings. They used to have like hard numbers based on real world figures, and then they started going with these multipliers, and then they don't even tell you what the base number is. So it's been a source of aggravation for me, because it's made it to where it makes it a lot harder to tweak your experience in the game. So like you essentially have to go in to the experience, get a feel for the experience, and then adjust it from there based on whether you want it to be more difficult or not. Reset armory lockers only on abandoned bunker activation. Whether to reset armory lockers, loot only when abandoned bunker is activated. I'm not sure what the purpose of that is. A lot of these settings are responses to how players have manipulated or tried to exploit the way the game is designed. So they create these new settings to counter how players are exploiting the game design. NPC. Max allowed characters. Maximum number of characters allowed to be present in the world, including player characters. And then I guess the default figure is -1. But I guess you can set that. So I assume that would include puppets, animals, maybe mechs, and then there's some other creatures that you haven't probably met yet. And then I assume it would include players too, but I don't know. Again, these are all these are all multipliers. So, you know, you just have to get a feel for the experience and then modify it from there. So if you wanted double whatever it was, I guess you'd set this to 2.0, or if you wanted it to be about 50%, you would set it to 0.5. I created a video for these horde settings. If you find that when you make noise that the horde that suddenly converges on your location is too easily triggered, or the horde maybe is too large in number, then you can adjust these numbers. I made a video where I just deactivated hordes at the time because they were ridiculous. I was out in an open snowy field and I made a little bit of noise, and then this horde spawns all around me within eyesight, like out of thin air, and then just converges on me, multiple puppets at a time. And that just disgusted me because of, you know, I knew what the game was like before, and this new horde system was broken, and I was kind of just amazed by the amount of testing or lack thereof had gone into that new feature. So encounter horde spawn distance multiplier. So here you can set like how far away the members of the horde spawn in, and I would recommend that you get a feel for whatever that distance is, and then I would push it out to like at least 100 meters, maybe 200 meters, you know. Of course, this isn't in meters, so you can't set it by the number of meters. You have to set it with a multiplier based on your current game experience. And so some of these settings are just expressions of my new dissatisfaction with aspects of the game based on how the game used to be. But anyway, they're not going to go back to the old system, so there's not much that you can do about it. Can remove low priority characters, so that's like a cleanup function, I guess, to keep your server from getting bogged down with all the different AI on the server. Can clamp character number when out of resources. The minimum for specific. Anyway, something to tinker with. I can't really provide you too much guidance on that. You may find some in forums on Reddit or something. Counter global zone cooldown multiplier. Base building encounter trigger chance. Base building, I don't know if that's enabled dropship world encounters. So here that's set to off. The dropship is it's like a big spaceship kind of thing that comes in with big guns. It's like a flying mech, and if you don't have the weapons to deal with it, it's just going to come in and cut you down. So, but supposedly they will only go after the biggest base or bases maybe on the map. They won't go after the little bases on the map, but I don't know if that's true or not. Let's see. Spawn encounter encounters in threat zones, ignoring base building. Spawn encounter in threat zones, ignoring usual prevention because of the presence of bases. I would probably leave that off. You're not going to want to have puppets spawning inside your base. Low player count mode. Oh my gosh. These are a lot of settings I've never seen before. Should enable low player count mode. Increase threat zone radius. Increase zombie count per encounter. Instant high threat zone activation. Huge performance hit on multiplayer servers. So you want to leave that off then. Base building encounter, minimum number elements to end. The base building encounter to end. So I think that this is okay. These are the default settings here, but I think that values set to 0 to 5 will be clamped to 5. Default here, here at least tells you 50 default value, which is 50. So I think this has to do with the dropship may come in and start shooting away at your base. So if you have like a certain minimum number of base elements, then it will bring in the dropship to start damaging your base, and then the minimum number of elements to end is when the dropship decides that it's done enough damage to your base and it flies away. That's my assumption as to what this is. Max allowed drones. Maximum number of drones allowed to be spawned in the world. If these are the drones that just fly around and then come hover around you and then look at you, I hate those damn things. I just turn it off, you know. That's up to you though. They don't really seem to serve a purpose in the game right now. You used to be able to get some fame points if you killed one, but I don't know if that's still the case. Disable sentry spawning. So the sentry, in other words a mech, if you don't want mechs in the game, you could turn that off. Mechs, honestly, they're, until fairly recently, they were just aimbots, you know, that turned a threatening area into like a stealth game, right? Because there was nothing really you could do to them. Maybe you could put down mines in their path to blow them up. I'm not sure. But and you could also hide in a bush, and the mech might not see you in the bush, but then sometimes the mech would just step on the bush because it was in its path, and then you'd get stepped on. But but now there are weapons in the game that you can use to kill a mech that make it a lot easier to kill a mech. But now also there are drop ships that will bring in replacement mechs, so now there's that. Let's see, enable POI sentry respawning. Yeah, so it says enable point of interest sentry respawning via dropships. So dropships can bring you know, mechs in to repopulate the area. Disable suicide puppet spawnings. That's if you don't want suicide bomber puppets ending your run for you. puppets can open doors, I would have that on, because that's just that's an AI improvement that's rather recent that I was wanting for years. And puppets can vault through the windows that players can vault through, and I would leave that on. Because you used to be able to just vault through a window and then the puppet would just stand there outside the window, not able to get through, and then you could just pop them in the head, but now you can't do that, and that makes the game more challenging. Especially if you played like 7 Days to Die like you have, then you know about puppet capabilities that are superior in that game to the capabilities of puppets in this game. Puppets slash zombies, right? Uh, puppet health multiplier, see, or set puppet max health multiplier. I guess that could make it easier to kill the puppets. Puppets are pretty easy to kill already. It's the puppet damage that I'm more concerned with. When a puppet can punch you in the back of the head and kill you, that seems a little ridiculous to me. I mean, yeah, it could happen in real life, but it's not going to happen that often. So, start time of day doesn't really matter too much. Unless you're like I did when I would set up my server, I would have the time of day speed. I think I would set it to 4. Yeah, like 4. It's hard to get it exact there. There. So 4, I believe, speed at which the time of day changes. 4 gives you real time, so that is 1 minute in game is the same as 1 minute in the real world. And then I would set the time so that it would be the same as my time in real life when I did a server restart, but that's not really important because there's an admin command that allows you to set the time of day, and then you could just sync your time using that right down to the minute, I think, or it might be in 6-minute increments, I'm not sure. Anyway, here you can set the sunrise time and sunset time, so if you want a day, like say an Arctic environment where the sun is maybe in the winter only up for like 3 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours at a time, you can do that here. Or maybe it's the Arctic during the summertime, in which case you can have it so that the sun only goes down for 2 to 3 hours at a time. So, because I'm trying to mirror my own experience, I would just keep track of the sunrise and sunset times in my local area and then adjust this as needed. But you can play with it. Like if you want to, what's that movie with Vin Diesel, Pitch Black or something? If you want like a world that's always dark, you can do that. But newsflash or tip, players generally don't like this game when it's nighttime. You'll find that player participation on the server drops when the sun sets. So it may actually be better to have more hours of daylight. Now if you have this set to 0, then the default setting, then you get a full day-night cycle. What is it? Is it every 6 hours, I think. I think it's every 6 hours. But you could time it in game just to make sure, but I believe, 24 divided by 4, I think that's 6, right? So I think it's every 6 hours. I just don't typically run my server like that, so. Let's see. You have unsaved changes. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, time of day, speed. Enable locked loot containers. Sets the world lockers to be locked or unlocked. Yeah, this is a complaint of mine. Here they set the lockers like in the police station or in, I think, the police station or in bunkers. And I think the lockers in the supply drop, although maybe the lockers in the supply drop are always locked, I'm not sure. But so the lockers that you find in buildings, you can either set them to be locked or unlocked. When I started playing, I think they were always unlocked. But then they made them locked, so then you would have to pick the locks. Or maybe I just set it that way myself, I forget. But I would prefer that this was a real number, so you could actually set the percentage of lockers that were locked versus unlocked, because the reality is some lockers should be unlocked and some lockers should be locked, right? But with this setting, it's either all or nothing. Custom map enabled. You can actually set this so that only a certain portion of the map is playable, and you can't leave that. I think it's a death zone if you try to leave that. And there will actually be, I think, like a force field on the borders of your custom map area. So like if you wanted to force players to play only in the city, you could set a custom map where the coordinates encompassed only the big city. But I've tried that and I've found that it's not popular with players because players don't want to pay for a game and then only be able to enjoy just a fraction of its content, so otherwise I think it would have been a really great playing experience. Custom map width and height. Oh, right. So you've got to set the coordinate of the center, and then you have to expand it out using width and height. Garage door lockability. Enable disable locking of garage doors. That's because griefers will come onto a server and they'll go around making locks and they'll go around locking all the garage doors, because a lot of vehicles would spawn inside a garage, so they would lock the garage doors so that other players couldn't get access to the vehicles that were spawning in the garages. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think vehicles are spawning out of garages quite frequently. So this was a counter to that practice, but I'm not sure it's even necessary anymore. I don't know if players are even bothering to do that. I've heard of players that have gone around and just like locked every door in a city to keep other players from looting it. So you'll have to decide whether you want to lock that or not. Cargo drop cooldown. This is, I don't know if this is my old setting, but this is pretty good. Minimum and maximum. So you can get like potentially like 2 or 3 cargo drops happening on the map at the same time. Um, and then you'll get spans of time where nothing's on the map. So um, here, this is the amount of time in seconds before the cargo drop starts to fall. And so here's 60, that's 10 minutes. So what you get is a text warning that there's a cargo drop in a certain sector, and then 10 minutes later it actually starts to fall, and then it takes 60 seconds in the fall duration to descend to the map. And then here, what is this? 60, this might be my own setting. Yeah, I set it to be max. So what is that? 60 seconds, 10 minutes would be 600 would be 10 minutes, and then this would be 1 hour, I guess, in seconds. So the cargo drop would self-destruct in 1 hour. Let's see, what's next? Hunting. I would set max allowed hunts. Maximum number of hunts allowed to be initiated in the world. I assume that's simultaneously. So I would set that down to like 4 or 5, because each one of those may take up system resources. And then you can set the health of the different animals that can be hunted. Personally, I find the hunting system to be not as good as it was when I started playing. The old way was much more natural. This way is much more scripted, and unless they've fixed it, the last time I even tried to do it, you would get like the animals' sound effects would be teleporting around you in 360 degrees, so you'd go in one direction and then it would teleport in the other direction, and it was giving completely bogus leads. It was just aggravating. So fortunately they added animals back to the encounter system, so now you do get animals that randomly spawn, and then you could just naturally hunt them the way you would do any animal that you came across. So so now it's a mixture between the scripted hunting system and natural the natural hunting of at least some of the animals. So next, respawn category. Allow sector respawn on, so that's if you want players to be allowed to choose the sector that they will spawn in. Allow shelter respawn, that's if you want players to be allowed to respawn in their shelter, in their base. Which can be good, you know, if you want to respawn back at base in order to gear up before you set out again. But those who maybe are trying to raid a base, they might not like that, because then even though they shot you through a window, then you're just going to respawn in the building again, and then they have to shoot you through a window again, and so forth. You know, it makes it harder for them to raid a base. Although there is, you know, an expenditure for respawning. And that's right here. That's these prices right here. So for a shelter, respawn price is 1 gold. So it's a pretty heavy price to shelter in your base, or to respawn in your base. And then there's like cooldown times, you know, and you could tweak that. This mostly has to do with PvP and the concerns of various types of respawn for PvP. If you're the only people on your server, if you immediately respawn, it doesn't hurt anyone. You know, you're not hurting any other players. They're not being exploited, so you can set that how you want. And same with suicide. This is all to try to prevent or keep the playing field fair. And then there's permadeath, and permadeath is mostly to instill some fear of dying, because then you'll have to re-roll your character, and I think your character probably won't be a member of your team anymore, and then you'll have to meet up with your other players again, and blah blah blah. So that's catering to the survival aspect of the game, but also the PvP, because then if you've killed a player, say 5 times maybe, then they'll be permanently dead, right? And you'll have gained some kind of victory over them. Vehicles. Now this, let me make sure, yeah. Now this, you can set this, again, it's multipliers, but what you can do is you can time like how long it takes to charge a battery with the alternator while you're driving it, and then from that figure you can calculate how much what it needs to be set to be realistic, you know, and not so gamey. Same with battery drain. You know, I actually went on Google and I Googled some of these figures to get an idea how long it should take for these things to happen, and then I made adjustments on my server to make it more realistic. But then what I found was that the gas mileage in the vehicles is kind of so good based on how small the map is, that I find you don't have to refuel that often. So then what you have to do is you have to change the gas station settings so that gas is more scarce. You know, to make it a challenge and make it more like a survival game. So here you can set the number of different vehicles. The higher these numbers are, the more it's going to tax your server, especially some that have physics to them, like if you have any rafts. Let me see if there are any rafts here. Raft. The RIS is a boat, so there's some physics involved in floating on the water that may tax your system. I forget what the SUP is. I think that's a stand-up paddleboard. So there may be physics involved there, but here's what I do. Bicycles, I have that number set pretty high, say maybe 40. So I might have 40 max amount, 20 functional, and then just a few available to purchase from the traders. Wheelbarrows, I set that high, like 40 wheelbarrows, 20 functional, and then say maybe 5 available from the traders, not too many. Dirt bikes won't be as high as bicycles, maybe 30 available, and then 15 functional. And then as the vehicles get better in the list, like the Rager, the truck is one of the best vehicles, then I make that more rare. I don't want that to be as easy to find. The Leica and the Volkswagen, I think the Leica is a bit better than the Volkswagen. So the better the vehicle, the more rare I make it, and that's why you'll see these airplane numbers are low. Now, right now they're set at 2, so that allows for 2 players to dogfight. I would set that to 3, because then that throws in a third party to the mix. So then, rather than being one side against another side, now you've got a third party to make it more chaotic. But you could increase the number of those airplanes if you wanted to like 4 or something. I don't think you'd be hurting anything, because they're not that easy to get. Maximum time of vehicle inactivity, I would set that very high. Like here the max value is 2400, and I forget how long that is, maybe 10 days. I think it's 10 days, or is it 100 days? 24 times 100 days maybe? Yeah, so that's a little over 3 months, is that right? And because I don't want the vehicles to like be despawning without any explanation. You know, I want that wreck to sit there for a while so that it gives you a chance to piece it together. Let's see. Resources. We already did that one, right? I think so. Come on. Yeah, unspawning. Okay. Damage. Yeah, watch out your scroll wheel doesn't change your game for you. Food decay, damage multiplier. Okay, so sentry damage multiplier, you can fiddle with that if you think they wall up you too hard. I think you can, I think I've actually set that to like 0.1, and they can still kill you pretty quickly. So I don't think you're making the game too easy by setting that to 0.1. However, it does seem like to me that the mechs maybe aren't as accurate as they used to be in with their gunshots, but I don't know, I could be wrong. Zombie damage multiplier, personally I like to turn that down a little bit because I think some of the zombies puppets hit a little hard. Item decay damage multiplier, so I think you can actually turn that down to like 0.1, and it's going to be about as realistic as you can get it to be. Because like items just don't rot that fast in the sun. Just doesn't happen. You know, it becomes gamey the way they've got it set. Food decay damage multiplier. Now what I would do to set this, if you wanted it to be realistic, you could take a steak, put it out on the ground at room temperature, so you would need one of the thermometers to make sure that where you are outside is close to room temperature. And then I would watch the steak until it degraded by 1%. And then you would have to do your math so that at 74%, that's when the steak should start going bad, right? So then you can Google it, find out, you know, how quickly does meat start to go bad at room temperature, right? And then you just got to do some math and then adjust this so that the steak starts to go bad when it should. You know, according to the time scale that you have set. For me, that's 1 minute in real time equals 1 minute in game. So I'd have to set it to be to conform to that time scale. But the default time scale is 4 times faster, or yeah, 4 times faster than real life. So you'd have to tweak it. But if if the food decays too fast, it gets a little ridiculous. Like when you're hunting animals and you harvest the meat, and then before you can even get the meat, you used to be able to salt the meat. I don't know if you can do that anymore. But before you can get the meat cooked or at least put in a refrigerator, then the meat starts going so bad that you can't even eat it anymore. Yeah, and I'm not sure if they changed this, but I think someone said, like, you can, like, just by cooking the meat, it would take away how bad the meat was or something. I'm not sure if that's true or not. I'm going to guess that it's not true, at least anymore. Anyway, I wasn't crazy about how fast the meat would decay. It didn't seem realistic to me, so I made it realistic. Features apply. Okay, base building. This is where you can set the number of pieces to your base that you can use per flag that you put down. And then you could set like how many more pieces you get per additional flag. And allow multiple flags per player. So like if you have like other members of your team, if they put down an additional flag, I think it can give you more. Oh no, this is allow multiple flags per player. This allows you to create multiple bases across the map. Allow flag placement on base building elements. That's in case you want to put the flag up on a third floor or something to help protect the flag. I believe. I didn't think that used to be possible, but maybe now it is. Chest acquisition duration. Time in hours that needs to pass after another squad put a chest in your flag area after you have logged in inside your flag area. This appears to be a new way to take the enemy flag, I guess. Another squad put a chest in your flag area after you've logged in inside your flag area. Time and hours that needs to pass after another squad put a chest in your flag area after you have logged in inside your flag area. I don't know, but what I'm assuming is that this is the new way to capture a flag. Before, you would go up to the flag and you would just, once you gained access to it, the opposing player's flag, and then you would claim the flag for yourself. But this amount of time would have to pass before the flag would actually convert to your side. So that would give the owning player the ability to recapture their own flag before the whole base completely went over to the other side. So that's a PvP thing. Raid protection. Enable log, I guess, for raiding. And then, so resources. This is for where wells and pumps, whether they have water in them or not. Then gasoline, that's for whether gas tanks or gas pumps at gas stations have gas in them and how often they replenish, etc. Personally, I would love to have the game, since it's a prison. I would love to have it where there was an initial amount of gas per gas tank or gas pump or gas station, and then have that be a finite amount of gas, so that near the end of the wipe, the only place where players can get gas is from by taking it from other players. But you would have to. I don't think there's any Well, there's a replenish amount, right? So maybe you could set that replenish amount so high that it doesn't replenish within the time of the wipe. I don't know. But I think this usually replenish amount might be, a rather short amount of time, like so many hours or so many days, so that even if this is 1 and then you set this up to 9, which is almost 10, 10, then that would still be at maximum 10 days. So you wouldn't be able to create that scenario that I was talking about that way. And then there's the same for propane tanks. Let's see, apply spawner probability multiplier. Okay, so this is for loot. So examine spawners. Those are the where there's a container and then you have to examine the container to see what's in it, that are hard built into the world. And then I think regular spawners are the items that you just find like lying on the ground. So you can mess with these multipliers to increase or reduce your loot. I think usually if you take it past 3, like if you take it up to 4, then I think most players consider that as too easy. But some players, honestly, they only have time to play the game for maybe an hour, maybe not even every night, right? So they want a chance to be able to get some of the nice loot in the game because they can't devote a lot of time to the game. So that's why they play on high loot servers. Now, item cooldown groups, duration multiplier that modifies item cooldown group durations. So I think you can jack this up so that it takes longer for items to respawn in the world. So you can set it so that, yeah, it's a high loot server, so that there's lots of loot to find, but then it doesn't respawn for a long time, so that you can loot out an area and then be required to move on to another area in order to find more loot, because you can't just stay in the same area and farm that same area day after day. That's another thing that I kind of don't dig about the game, is that players can just sit there in one place and just keep getting loot day after day, and then they don't have to go anywhere else. So then that prevents player versus player interaction. It doesn't even have to be player versus player fighting. It just prevents players from running into each other and having any kind of social interaction like you might have, or really are supposed to have in this game's scenario, where it's supposed to be an open, free roam prison where, I mean, open because of the size, but not open because of the walls that are around the prison. So if players all stay at their little bases all over the map, then they're not motivated to run into each other. So it prevents the very thing that the game is supposed to be about, which is it's supposed to be like a Hunger Games type scenario. So farming, first plant harvest additional chance. Oh, that's the additional chance. Percentage that modifies the chance for produce to spawn on first harvest. Huh. I always thought I set it to 90% because I wanted there to be a possibility that there would be a failure to grow that food. But then this says now additional chance. And then plant harvest examine time multiplier. I guess that's almost like a cooldown for the plant that you're trying to grow, whether it's successfully harvested or not. So then here you get skill multipliers. So when you use a skill, you can adjust these multipliers so that it can be easier to acquire skill in certain skills in relation to others, in comparison to others. So if you find that it's really hard to level up a certain skill, just go into these settings and then adjust it so that it's easier to acquire skill in that skill, and then go home happy. Miscellaneous. So body simulation speed multiplier. So now if if you change the time scale of your server the way I would do, where it's 1 minute equals 1 minute in real life equals 1 minute in game, well then you have to change your body simulation speed. Otherwise you could be like having to, go to the bathroom like way too often, right? Like, what, in real life, maybe I go to the bathroom like, or might need to absolutely go to the bathroom maybe twice a day. So you would need to change this so that it's your digestive processes are more in line with reality, right? However, I found that as far as healing, like, I forget what it was, like digesting the meds to deal with your healing could either outpace or be outpaced by your healing process. Like I think I found that healing wasn't like somehow connected to the body simulation speed, so that I wound up with this weird situation where, like, I think it was pain meds or other kind of healing meds just didn't even have a chance to kick in before my own body healed or something. Anyway, so be careful of that. But also, if you set your body simulation speed to a realistic time scale like I did, then there's way too much food in the game. Like, you won't find that it's a survival game at all. Like, once you know where to find food, you won't find that it's difficult at all to stay fed, so I wish that there were food loot modifiers in this game so that you could make food more scarce. Right now the default settings seem to be pretty good for the default time scale, but that's kind of because I know where to find food. Once you do, the game becomes a lot easier, and however, one thing you have to worry about or be careful of is that you can get fat pretty fast. And a good rule for that is to only eat when your stomach starts growling, right? If you try to keep your stomach topped off at 100% all the time, which is what I was mistakenly doing, then you'll get so fat that it'll start affecting your movement speed and your stamina, etc. And once you get fat, once your character gets fat, it is super hard to burn that fat off. So um, yeah, don't even go there. It's just like real life. Once you get fat, it's hard to get rid of the fat. So um, enable BCU locking. That's where you can use the chip on the back of your head, I guess, or you can use the BCU lock that's tied to the chip in the back of your head to lock things, and only players, I guess, that the player that has that BCU can unlock that lock. So it's excuse me, I think it's kind of like a lock that can't be picked, though they may have added something to the game now where it can be hacked or something. I don't know. Enable new player protection. Interesting. I don't know what that is. New player protection duration. Is that seconds or minutes? Duration in minutes of the new player protection. Oh, so right now a new player has 2 hours where they're protected. What are they protected from? I don't know. That's interesting. I heard something about the lower end, or the beginning part of the game would be easier, but I didn't know we're being protected outright, and I'm not sure to what extent we're being protected. Allow automatic parachute opening. Right now this is set to on. I didn't realize that was set to on. I didn't even know that was a thing. I think it's kind of funny when, the player doesn't open their chute and they just slam right into the ground. Pretty quickly they realize, oh, there's something I have to do to pop my parachute. And it makes for good video content for new players, and the people who are watching them, because we get to have a laugh, that you didn't pop your chute and that you just slammed right into the ground. So it's not the end of the world if, maybe it... Anyway, so hide quick access bar. I don't know, hide life indicators. I guess that's if you want to clean up your HUD some. Base building, we already did that. Okay, custom zones. Okay, so here you have to know the coordinates. There's a way to find out the coordinates. You can either use, I think it's scummap.org or .com or something. There's a nice map online where you can fetch the coordinates of different locations, and then and then you can set the rules for, like, for example here, outposts, and then you can set what kinds of damage are allowed and whether you could pick player locks or not, pick the world locks or not, whether you can build bases in that zone or not. And then there's a cascading effect that's kind of tricky. Like, for example, if you make a zone within another zone, like whether the zone within the other zone is going to inherit the settings of the zone it's in and so forth. It gets a little complicated that way. What I like to do is I like to create some player areas. For example, there's a firing range just south of the airport. I like to turn that whole firing range into a safe zone so players can practice their marksmanship there. There's also some hunting camps on the map. I like to turn those into safe zones. And I think down at the port in A4 there's also another smaller firing range there, and I like to turn that into a player safe zone. So it gives an opportunity for PvE to happen there. But honestly, running your own rental server, um, it's really hard to get players to use your server in this game. So you can do all this work and then it's like pulling teeth trying to get players to use your server. So some 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 servers are pretty successful, especially if they have like bots and sweepstakes and drawings and raffles and stuff like that going on using Discord bots. I don't know if they still have Discord bots for the game, but yeah. So there are servers that can be pretty darn popular, and you know, more power to those guys. It takes a lot of work. It takes admins spending a lot of time, you know, keeping track of things, and so it's not something that happens easily without a lot of work. Usually, work by multiple people to run a successful server in this game. So more power to them if they can do it. I did not see. Let me escape here. I did not see a setting for blueprints, which kind of pisses me off, because with the blueprint setting I used to be able to set like how fast a base would decay. Maybe there's no base decay in the game anymore. But like where you saw the crate had a lifespan of 14 days, I used to be able to set that to like 3 months or 6 months or something. So as an admin, I could go around the map and I could plant loot like Easter eggs in hidden locations. I could this game can be very 3D, very vertical. Like you can climb up to places you didn't think you could go, and as an admin I could hide loot up there for the player that bothered to look for stuff, and I could reward them for doing so. Or I could plant loot in hard to reach locations, hard to reach or hard to find locations, and reward the players who actually explored the map. And these developers, man, they drive me crazy. Anytime they see something fun in this game, they just remove it. And so yeah, so now I can't apparently set the blueprint time at all. After they nerfed the amount of blueprint time you could put, the lifespan for base elements and for like crates and things, and now it doesn't look like I can adjust it at all. Another thing I could do with that is that I could put up signs. There are blank signs, and I could put little messages on the signs. You know, like in Rust, you can make a note with a piece of paper, and you can communicate things with that note. And I would communicate things with those signs and make the place look more lived in. Well, you know, they reduced the lifespan of these items, and now the blueprints, I don't even see the setting for it, so I can't do that anymore. Because if I put down a sign in 2 weeks, it's going to be gone, and it's just not worth the effort, because I can put the sign there and no player may ever see it, you know, because it might be so far removed from the path well traveled. So it's a little aggravating. I mean, those of us who have played this game for a while have seen lots of things inexplicably removed from the game. However, when you haven't been accustomed to certain features and you're new to the game, and you're experiencing everything anew, and you haven't had anything taken away from you, then you can still have great fun with the game. I'm finally, after several months since last December, finding the game to be at least somewhat playable, to the point where I've been playing it again lately. It's nothing like it was, and in numerous ways it has been improved. I'll give them that, but I miss some of the freedom that admins used to have to customize the experience for players who used their private servers, that they pay good money to rent, you know. Like, if this game can finally reach version 1, and if these developers, which I doubt, because I think that anyway, I I have reasons to doubt that these developers are going to allow modding in this game, the way they do in, say, DayZ, which drives me crazy because I was involved with the Arma series from its beginning, during its early days, and in DayZ I still see old limitations of the original Arma back in 2001, and I've tried DayZ. I've wanted to like DayZ, but in my opinion DayZ does not compare to Scum. But then the developers come along and remove the ability of admins and server renters to customize the experience. So the fact that DayZ can have mods kind of makes DayZ better, you know? So that's another source of aggravation for me. So there are other settings that you will find in your server rental service that can be customized, and they differ depending on the server rental service. Like I used gPortal for a long time, but then I went to another rental service and I noticed that they had like completely different settings available on their service, and then but then didn't have some of the other ones that I liked like to tweak on gPortal. So I can't really go over those settings not knowing which service you're using, and maybe not even having access to that service. So you'll have to do a little research for those to customize your experience there. I would recommend, however, tweaking these settings to your liking, and not just going with the default game experience, because you can have that on an official server. You may run into cheaters on an official server, but I assume it's possible that cheaters could, try to cheat on your server if they were allowed access. But it seems to be the case that if a server doesn't have much in the way of traffic or simultaneous users, then the cheaters don't even bother wasting their time there. So that's one of the advantages of having a server that isn't very popular. Anyway, I'll end this here. I hope this has been some help to you. Yeah, so I'll wrap it up.